Welcome to Crushed Husband. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. Mark, the narrator, reveals his life at 38, married for 10 years to Liza. Liza has a teenage son, Andrew, from a previous relationship. One day during breakfast, Liza drops a bombshell. She underwent a medical procedure to prevent having more children, a decision made without consulting Mark. Initially shocked, Mark feels robbed of his dream to have a biological child of his own. Liza suggests that Andrew can be their son, but Mark feels the emptiness of his unfulfilled dream. Despite the heartache, he decides to swallow his disappointment, hoping his love for Andrew will fill the void. Scene 2. Clash over authority. Word count, 750 plus or minus 5%, 713 to 788. Andrew, now 13, is increasingly rebellious, dismissing Mark's authority. He comes home late, smelling of cigarettes, and dismisses Mark's concerns with a curt, "It's none of your business." A juice-throwing incident sparks a major argument, with Liza defending Andrew and telling Mark not to discipline him. Mark begins to feel like an outsider in his own home, and the tension builds. The final straw comes when Andrew racks up charges on Mark's credit card. Mark, in frustration, tells Andrew to leave if he can't respect him. Liza calls him childish and overreacting, leaving Mark feeling utterly defeated. Scene 3, growing distance. Word count, 650 plus or minus 5%, 618 to 683. Over the course of a year, Liza and Andrew grow more distant from Mark. They stop talking to him and whisper when he enters the room. Andrew, once close to him, now avoids asking for help, and Liza withdraws emotionally. Mark feels like a ghost in his own home, unable to break the emotional barrier that keeps growing between them. The dread intensifies as Liza and Andrew continue to grow colder and more distant. Scene 4. The call that shattered everything. Word count, 780 plus or minus 5%, 741 to 819. While working from home, Mark overhears Liza on the phone with someone he doesn't recognize. To his horror, he realizes she's planning a divorce and intends to leave with Andrew. The person on the other end is Andrew's biological father, who Liza had previously denounced but is now reuniting with, as he has become a successful doctor. Mark confronts Liza, and she coldly declares that she doesn't love him anymore. Andrew mocks Mark, saying he's happy with his real father. The house, once a home, fills with anger, and they demand that Mark leave. I had always imagined being the father who set boundaries, the one who could keep his kid on the right path. But here I was, standing in the living room, staring at Andrew as he slammed the door behind him. My words were still hanging in the air like smoke from a bad argument. It had started earlier that night, when I caught Andrew sneaking in after midnight. The smell of cigarettes was still thick on him, and his eyes, bloodshot and unbothered, told me everything I needed to know. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice low but firm. "I was out," he said, shrugging like it was no big deal. "No, where were you?" I pressed, crossing my arms, feeling my temper rise. Andrew's gaze met mine for a second, and then he turned away, his face twisting into something between annoyance and defiance. "It's none of your business," he shot back. I stood there, speechless for a moment. None of my business? I'd been working my ass off to keep a roof over his head, and this was the respect I got? I opened my mouth to argue, but before I could get a word out, he turned and walked away, heading up the stairs without another glance. I was fuming, but I wasn't ready to let it slide. By the time dinner rolled around, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. Liza, as usual, was trying to keep the peace, but the little smirk she wore when she caught me looking at Andrew made me feel like I was already losing the fight. We were sitting around the table, the air so dense you could cut it with a knife, when Andrew decided to make his move. Liza was handing me the juice jug when Andrew, in a move so quick I didn't even process it, flung his glass across the table. Juice splashed everywhere, on the table, on my shirt, and a bit of it even hit Liza's favorite vase. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I demanded, feeling the heat in my face. Andrew just glared at me, his eyes full of nothing but contempt. "You never let me do anything. You're always on my case." I wiped the juice off my chest, my hands trembling with anger. "You don't get to treat me like this in my own house." I set the glass down, my voice shaking, but I couldn't hide the fury creeping into my words. I'm the one who's been looking out for you, giving you everything I've got, and this is how you repay me?" Andrew's lips curled into a sneer. "Maybe you should have stayed out of my business. You're not my real dad." Liza's face went pale, but she didn't say anything. It was like she was waiting for me to lose it, and honestly, I was ready to. I leaned forward, staring Andrew down. "If you can't respect me, you should leave. I'm done." Liza immediately stood up, her voice sharp. "Mark, don't be ridiculous. This is childish." "Childish?" I barked. "You know what's childish? Letting him get away with everything while I'm the one holding the damn house together." Liza took a deep breath, her eyes flicking from me to Andrew. "You're overreacting. He's a teenager." I shot her a look, the disappointment so thick it almost physically hurt. "And you're enabling him. You let him do whatever he wants while I'm the bad guy, trying to set any kind of limits." Andrew leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You're not even my real father. You have no right to talk to me like that." I stood there, frozen for a moment, that phrase echoing in my head. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it, but tonight, in this moment, it felt like a slap in the face. I'd poured my heart into this family, into him. But I was nothing. Liza's voice softened, but her eyes stayed hard. "Mark, stop. This isn't the way to handle it." But it was too late. I was done. The last shred of patience I'd been holding on to was slipping away, and all I could do was spit out the words I knew would break everything. "Then let him leave," I said, my voice quiet but heavy. "Let him go somewhere else if he can't respect me." Liza's face turned red with frustration, her lips trembling. "Mark, you're being childish. This isn't how we solve problems in a family." "Family?" I repeated bitterly. "It's easy to talk about family when you only care about keeping things comfortable, right? You haven't seen the way he talks to me, the way he treats me. I'm not a guest in this house, Liza." But she didn't respond. Instead, she turned to Andrew and nodded as if agreeing with him. "Maybe we should just go to our room for the night." She didn't look at me when she spoke. That's when I knew. I wasn't the father in this house, not anymore. I wasn't the one making the decisions. I was nothing more than a stranger. I stormed out of the room, the sound of Liza's sigh echoing behind me, and even though I knew I should be angry, I just felt hollow, like I had already lost everything. It didn't take long for the house to feel different. Quiet, distant, uncomfortable. Liza and Andrew started pulling away, as if they'd made a pact to shut me out without ever saying it aloud. It was subtle at first, a glance shared between them when I walked into a room, the quick hush of a conversation when I entered, the change in tone when I spoke. At first I tried to brush it off. "They're just adjusting," I told myself, but the longer it went on, the more it felt like an emotional wall was going up between us. The distance wasn't just in the way they looked at me, it was in the silence that followed every attempt I made to reach out. Andrew stopped asking for help with his schoolwork, a change I noticed immediately. I used to help him with his math homework, the same way I had helped him with little things when he was younger. It used to be a way for us to connect, even if it was just over fractions and equations. But now, he would just mutter that he didn't need me, that he could handle it himself. At dinner, Liza would pick at her food and occasionally glance at me, but her eyes didn't linger anymore. Her smiles felt hollow, like they were meant for show, not for me. When I asked how her day was, it was always the same response. Fine. No details, no warmth, just fine. It was like I was already a ghost in my own home. It wasn't just the silence that hurt. It was the way they acted when I did speak. I tried to engage them in family talks. Small things, like asking about plans for the weekend, or how their day had been. But when I did, they both seemed to close off. Andrew would shrug, give me a one-word answer, and Liza would add nothing more than a distracted, It wasn't that they were outright rude or cruel, but it was clear they weren't interested. They had their own world, and I was a spectator. It felt like the house was getting colder by the minute, and no matter how hard I tried to warm it up, I couldn't. One night, after a long day at work, I decided to make an effort. I thought, maybe we just need some time to talk, really talk. I cooked dinner, a big batch of spaghetti, something we all used to enjoy. I figured it would be a simple way to bring us back together, just like old times. Liza sat down, but she barely touched her food. Andrew pushed his plate aside, staring at his phone, not even pretending to care. I tried again. Andrew, how's school going? I asked, watching him swipe through his phone, his eyes glazed over. Fine, he muttered without looking up. Liza, sitting across from me, glanced at me but said nothing. I waited, but the silence only deepened. I'm just asking, I said, trying to lighten the mood. You're doing all right, aren't you? Another silence. Then Andrew scoffed. What's it matter to you? My chest tightened. I tried to keep my voice steady. It matters because I care. It's my job to care. You're not my dad, Andrew said, sharp and cold, like a knife cutting through whatever thread of connection was left between us. You don't have to care. Liza's eyes flicked to me briefly, but she didn't say a word. My mouth went dry as I tried to process what Andrew had just said. The words stung, even though I'd heard them before. He'd said it 100 times before, but this time, it felt different. This time, I felt it. The man I had tried to be for him, the one who loved him, tried to guide him, tried to protect him, wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. I couldn't protect him from the things he didn't want to hear, and worse, I couldn't even protect myself from the truth he was laying bare. I pushed my plate aside, my appetite gone. You know, Andrew, I said quietly, when I married your mom, I didn't just marry her. I married this family. I took on a responsibility for you too, and I've been doing the best I can. Yeah, he snapped. Well, maybe I don't want your best. My heart sank. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. The sadness, the rage, everything crashed down at once. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him understand, but I didn't. Instead, I looked at Liza, who had remained silent the whole time. She didn't even meet my eyes. She just stared at her food, chewing slowly, her face unreadable. For the first time, I realized she had chosen. She had chosen him over me. The next morning, the tension was unbearable. I could feel the space between us growing, like we were all orbiting different planets. I asked if she wanted to go out for coffee after work, but Liza didn't even seem to hear me. She had her face buried in her phone, scrolling through whatever it was she needed to distract herself from reality. When I got home that evening, I found myself sitting in the living room alone. The house, once warm and full of laughter, felt like a prison. I used to look forward to coming home, to seeing Liza and Andrew, hearing their voices. But now it was just silence. I wanted to fix things. I tried everything I could think of. I even bought a new game for us to play together. Something light, fun, a way to break through. But Liza just gave me a blank look, and Andrew didn't even pretend to care. I was invisible in my own home, and that's when it hit me. This isn't just a phase. They weren't just mad at me. They weren't just upset about the argument we had over discipline. No, it was deeper than that. They had chosen a side, and I wasn't on it. The rest of the night dragged on. I stayed up late, staring at the walls, listening to their whispered conversations behind closed doors. Every word felt like a door closing in my face, and every silence felt like a sentence I couldn't escape. I could feel the dread building, the weight of the emptiness pressed down on me with every passing day. I didn't know how much longer I could keep pretending everything was okay. I was sitting in the living room, going over some paperwork, when I heard Liza's voice from the kitchen. She was talking, but not to me. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but her words sliced through the air, clear as day. I can't keep pretending, I just can't, she said, her voice low but tense. I've been thinking about this for a while now. I want a divorce, and I'm taking Andrew with me. I froze, my pen still in hand. Divorce? My chest tightened as the words started to sink in, but it wasn't the idea of divorce that hit hardest. It was the way she said it, like she had already made up her mind. She wasn't conflicted, she wasn't hurting, she had planned it. And then I heard the name. I don't care about the timing anymore, she continued, her voice shaky but determined. He's better off with me and Andrew. Kevin's doing well now. He's a doctor and he's different. I can't stay in this house with Mark anymore. Kevin, that Kevin, the one she had always dismissed as a disaster, the one she told me was no good, who'd lost custody of Andrew when things got messy years ago. I couldn't believe it. She was going back to him. I felt my body go cold. The room, once familiar and comforting, now felt alien. My mind raced, trying to process the words, but nothing made sense. And then, before I could get up, before I could even react, I heard her next words hit me like a blow to the gut. I don't love Mark anymore, she said, her voice so final. I need to do what's best for me and Andrew, and Kevin. He's the father. He's the one who deserves to be with him. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I couldn't breathe. Kevin was her real choice. He was the one she was going back to. All those years I had spent trying to be a father to Andrew, trying to create a family with Liza, and she was going to leave me for him. For someone I knew, someone who had never been good enough for her in her eyes. The room started to spin, and for a moment, I thought I might pass out. But I forced myself to stand, pushed past the dizzying feeling in my chest, and walked toward the kitchen. Every step felt heavy, like my feet were sinking into the floor. When I entered, Liza was standing there, still holding her phone. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. The silence between us felt suffocating, thick with unspoken things, with betrayals that had been building for far too long. "Liza," I finally managed, my voice barely a whisper. "What the hell is this? What are you doing?" She looked at me, and there was nothing in her eyes. No remorse, no hesitation, just coldness. "I'm sorry, Mark," she said, her tone emotionless. "This is the only way. I've been thinking about it for months. I don't love you anymore. I'm not happy here." I could feel my hands ball into fists at my sides. "And you couldn't tell me this before," I said, my voice shaking now. "You couldn't tell me you were planning to leave? You couldn't tell me that the man you said would never be good enough for Andrew is suddenly the one you're going back to?" Her eyes flickered with something. Guilt, maybe? But it passed too quickly. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, but I knew it was a lie. "But I can't keep living a lie. I've been miserable, Mark. And Andrew, he deserves a real family. He deserves Kevin." A cold laugh escaped me. "A real family? That's what this is about. After everything I've done for you and Andrew, after I've worked so hard to make this work, you think Kevin is the better choice?" "I'm sorry," she repeated, her voice distant now, as if she'd already emotionally checked out. It's too late for us. You don't understand." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I saw her for who she was. The woman who had promised me a future, only to destroy it with a decision made behind my back. She was already gone. Before I could say anything else, the sound of footsteps behind me made me turn. Andrew stood in the doorway, his face filled with disdain. "Mark," he said, his voice mocking, "I'm happy with my real dad. You don't have to worry about me anymore." I didn't know if it was the final jab or just the sheer weight of everything crashing down on me, but something inside me broke. I'd been nothing to him. I'd been nothing to both of them. They were a team now, Liza and Andrew going back to Kevin, leaving me in the dust. I turned to Liza, my voice cracking. "So this is it? You're just going to throw everything away?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke volumes. She had made her choice, and she didn't care about the wreckage it left behind. Andrew walked out of the kitchen, not sparing me another glance. I stood there, my heart heavy with a mix of rage and pain. "You don't get to just leave me," I said, my voice breaking as I took a step toward her. "I built this life for us. I fought for this family." Liza didn't meet my eyes. She just walked out of the room, following Andrew, and I was left standing there, a man without a family, without a purpose, without anything but the sound of the door clicking shut behind them. The house that had once felt like a home felt hollow now, empty, and the weight of it crushed me. I collapsed onto the couch, staring at nothing, unable to move. They were gone, and I was the one left with the wreckage of my own life. The divorce was quick, too quick, really. Once Liza and I agreed on the terms, there was nothing left to drag out. She kept the house, and Andrew's future, whatever it was now, wasn't my responsibility anymore. It stung, the finality of it. The once warm, bustling home that I built with my hands turned into a shell of what it had been. It felt like an obituary to a life I thought would last forever. Liza left with Andrew and the few things they had, the memories, the pictures, the promises that now felt like lies. As they packed up their things, I watched silent, as if the whole thing was happening to someone else. The house, which had always echoed with laughter, now felt empty, the silence thick and suffocating. The emptiness didn't just fill the rooms, it consumed everything. The kitchen, the living room, the bedroom. Every space I used to take comfort in now felt like a prison, and the worst part was knowing that I would never be the same person again. The person who built that house, the one who believed in the dream of having a family, was gone. In his place, there was just a man hollowed out by betrayal, confusion, and loss. I spent the first few weeks barely sleeping. I'd lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to turn my mind off. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Liza and Andrew packing up their lives without me. Every time I thought about what happened, the sting was there, deep, sharp, relentless. I'd catch myself walking into rooms and forgetting why I was there. The space was foreign, even though I knew it better than my own skin. I would open the fridge, see the half-empty containers of food we used to eat together, and for a moment, I'd expect to hear Andrew's voice, or Liza's laugh, or even just the sound of them moving around doing their thing. But there was nothing. I started drinking more. Not to get drunk, just to fill the silence. I'd open a beer after work and sit on the porch, looking at the backyard. It used to be full of life. We'd spent hours there. Me and Andrew throwing the football, Liza sitting on the steps with a glass of wine, watching us. But now, it was just a yard. The grass needed mowing, the fence needed fixing. But I couldn't bring myself to care. Everything felt like a reminder of what was missing. Some nights, I'd sit at the kitchen table, replaying conversations in my head. Every argument with Liza, every time I felt like I was losing her. I'd run through it all like a loop, trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong. The guilt gnawed at me. What if I hadn't pushed so hard to be a father to Andrew? What if I'd just focused on my own happiness, instead of trying to make a family out of nothing? The divorce papers came in the mail, and I signed them without hesitation. It was a strange feeling, like signing away my life. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to feel angry anymore. There was nothing left to be angry about. Liza was gone. Andrew was gone. And I was just left with the emptiness and a stack of papers that finalized the end of everything. There was no child support, no custody battle. Since I never officially adopted Andrew, it wasn't required. It was a relief in some ways. It was just another thing I didn't have to fight for. But it left a bitter taste in my mouth. A reminder that, in their eyes, I was never more than a stranger who got too close. I kept busy with work, just trying to fill the hours. But the long, sleepless nights continued. There were moments when I'd sit at my desk, staring at the numbers on my computer screen, and wonder if this was all there was now. The life I'd worked so hard to build felt like it was crumbling around me, and all I had left were the walls of a house that now felt like a tomb. I thought about therapy, but it didn't seem like something I'd actually do. I was supposed to be strong, right? I was supposed to just move on, suck it up. But I couldn't. I couldn't just get over it. I needed something, someone. And yet, I found myself completely isolated. The world outside didn't know what I was going through. No one knew how much it hurt to look at those empty rooms, to come home every night to a house that was too big for just me. The emptiness crept in deeper with every passing day. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't outrun it. I was alone, and that's all I could feel. One afternoon, when the grief and exhaustion had caught up to me, I ran into a wall. Literally. I was walking around the house, looking for something to do, and I slammed my foot into the corner of a table I'd never moved. I collapsed on the floor, unable to move for a few seconds, just holding my foot, feeling the pain shoot through me. I was a mess, not just physically, but emotionally. I couldn't pretend anymore. There was no one left to lie to. The next day I called a therapist. I knew it was time to start healing. I felt like a broken man, but the therapist's office felt like the one place I could go where I didn't have to pretend. At first, I didn't know what to say. I'd been keeping everything inside for so long, suppressing the hurt, pushing back the anger, that I didn't know how to let any of it out. The room was small, the kind of place that would have been too quiet if not for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the occasional sound of a clock ticking. The therapist, Mara, was patient. She didn't rush me. She let me sit there, her pen poised over a notepad, waiting for me to speak. I think I spent the first 3 sessions just staring at the floor, saying nothing. Sometimes the only thing I could manage to say was, "I don't know." But eventually, the words started to come. Slowly, hesitantly, and once I started, it was like a dam broke. I talked about Liza, about the years of trying to make things work, how I had convinced myself that love was enough, that if I just kept giving, kept fighting, things would get better. I talked about how she had left, how I'd never seen it coming, how I still couldn't wrap my head around it. I'd been a father figure to Andrew for years, but now it felt like everything I had done was nothing more than a waste of time. Mara listened. She didn't interrupt. She let me speak, and when I was done, she didn't judge me. She didn't tell me I was wrong for feeling the way I did, or that I needed to move on faster. She just acknowledged the pain and let me sit with it. The anger you're feeling, Mara said one session, that's the part you're avoiding, isn't it? I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. It's hard. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to feel like I'm holding on to something that's gone. I get that, but anger isn't the enemy. It's just a signal. It tells you that something's been taken from you, that it's okay to feel betrayed. I had never thought of it like that. Anger as a signal. I always thought anger was something to control, to shut down. But maybe I had been suppressing it all these months, and that's why it kept creeping up on me at the wrong moments. You have to feel the pain, Mara said softly. You have to let it come out. Only then can you begin to heal. Otherwise, it'll stay with you in the background, affecting everything you do, whether you know it or not. That was the hardest part of therapy, letting myself feel everything. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I would come home, the ache in my chest so strong I couldn't breathe, and I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, letting the tears come. For the first time in a long time, I felt everything. The frustration, the anger, the grief, and it was exhausting, but it was also liberating. I found myself thinking about who I was before all of this, before Lisa, before Andrew, before the house. Who had I been when I was just Mark? What did I want out of life before I tried to play the role of the perfect husband, the perfect father? In therapy, Mara would ask me to think back to those moments. I would try to remember the man I was when I still had hope, before it all fell apart. There were small victories, like when I finally admitted that I'd been living someone else's dream, that I'd been trying to fix a relationship that was already broken, hoping I could somehow make it work. But when I said those words out loud, it was like a weight lifted. I didn't have to carry that burden anymore. By the time a month had passed, I felt like I was slowly rebuilding myself. I wasn't fixed, not by a long shot, but I was starting to feel like I could live again. And that, for me, was a start. I had a lot of work to do, a lot of things I needed to work through, but therapy gave me the tools I needed to start making sense of everything that had happened. I started to forgive myself for the mistakes I had made. I started to understand that I wasn't perfect, and neither was Liza. But the biggest thing I learned, I couldn't change the past. I couldn't force someone to love me, and I couldn't force Andrew to see me as the father I wanted to be to him. What I could control, though, was how I moved forward. And so, after each session, I started to focus less on the anger and more on the future, on what came next. Because I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to let this ruin me. I wasn't going to let them take everything I had left. I almost didn't go to the work event. The last thing I wanted was to spend an evening in a room full of people pretending to be happy, while I was just trying to hold myself together. But I had promised myself I wouldn't shut myself off from life, not entirely. So, despite the hollow feeling in my chest, I went. That's where I met her, Evelyn. She wasn't the type of person I would have expected to notice me. She was 10 years younger, easy to talk to, humble in a way that made the people around her feel at ease. She wasn't pushing to get ahead, wasn't playing games. She was just there, and for some reason, I found myself drawn to her. We started talking at the event's bar, mostly about the project I was working on and how overwhelming things had been. She listened, really listened, without giving advice or trying to fix things. She didn't make me feel like I was spilling my guts to a stranger. I felt like I was talking to someone who could understand me without judgment. Over the next few months, we ran into each other at a few more events, and the conversations grew longer, deeper. There was something about her that made it easy to forget about the mess that had become my life. She was kind, steady, and always asked how I was doing. Really asked. It was nice. One evening, after a long conversation about nothing in particular, Evelyn said something that stuck with me. You know, sometimes we spend so much time trying to fix other people, we forget to take care of ourselves. You're a good person, Mark. You deserve to be happy. It hit me harder than I expected. Here I was, still haunted by the past, feeling like a failure for everything that had fallen apart. And this woman, this stranger, was telling me that I deserved more than the emotional scraps Liza had left me with. I didn't realize it then, but that moment was the beginning of something new. Evelyn wasn't just an escape. She was the first person in a long time who made me believe that I could rebuild my life. She made me see that I wasn't defined by what had happened with Liza and Andrew. There was more to me than my failures as a husband, as a father, as a man. As the months passed, our friendship turned into something more. We started dating. Slowly at first, tentative, like we were both scared of what would happen if we let ourselves fall too fast. But each day, it felt easier. She didn't carry any baggage from my past, no preconceived judgments. She simply accepted me as I was. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. There was one evening, about a year into our relationship, when we were sitting at a cafe, sipping wine and talking about the future. I had told her everything, about Liza, about Andrew, about the emptiness I had felt for so long. I expected her to say something comforting, maybe even try to tell me that I would get over it, but Evelyn didn't say that. Instead, she looked at me with those soft brown eyes and said, "You didn't deserve that, Mark. You never deserved it. I don't know how you've carried all of this for so long, but you're a good man. I know you've been through hell, but it's not your fault." And that, in a strange way, was exactly what I needed to hear. It wasn't about fixing the past. It was about accepting that it was part of my story, but it didn't have to define me. She was right. I hadn't done anything wrong. I had tried and tried and tried, and in the end, I hadn't been the one who gave up. We spent that evening talking about everything and nothing at all, and as I walked her back to her apartment, I realized something. I was finally starting to feel something that wasn't pain, wasn't regret, wasn't loneliness. I was starting to feel hope. A few months later, when I proposed to her, it was the easiest decision I'd ever made. There was no hesitation, no fear. I knew Evelyn was the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I had a new sense of purpose, one that had nothing to do with fixing the wreckage of my past. We had a small wedding, just a handful of close friends, true friends, the kind who had stuck by me when I needed them most, the kind who didn't see me as a failure or someone defined by his past mistakes. The ceremony was simple but perfect, and when I saw Evelyn standing there, smiling at me, I knew I had finally found something real again. Over the next 2 years, our relationship grew stronger. We traveled together, talked about our dreams, and made plans for the future. Real plans. It was nothing like the hollow promises I had made with Liza. With Evelyn, everything felt possible, and one day, just as I was beginning to believe that I could finally put my past behind me, Evelyn told me she was pregnant. It hit me like a wave, and I found myself smiling for the first time in years, feeling like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. This was my chance, my real chance, to be the father I had always wanted to be. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just hoping for a future, I was living it. The honeymoon was everything I hadn't known I needed. It wasn't the exotic destination or the grand gestures. It was the simplicity of it all. Just me and Evelyn, miles away from the world we had both left behind, and it felt like breathing for the first time in years. I didn't have to explain myself to her. She didn't judge me, didn't ask for more than I could give. We spent our days walking through cobbled streets, laughing over ridiculous restaurant choices, and losing track of time in the warmth of each other's company. For the first time since forever, I didn't feel like a failure. There was no weight of my past hanging over me, no echoes of betrayal or regret following my every step. It was just us. And then, one evening, as we lay in bed, she turned to me, a soft smile on her face, the kind that made my heart skip a beat. "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice so steady, but with a spark of joy I could feel in my bones. I don't know how long I lay there, staring at her, my mind frozen in a perfect moment of disbelief. Pregnant. It took a second for the words to settle in my head, but when they did, everything changed. My heart raced and a wide smile crept across my face. "Are you serious?" I asked, even though the look on her face told me it was real. She nodded, her hand on my chest. "Yes, Mark, I'm serious." Tears pricked my eyes, though I didn't let them fall. I felt something swell inside me. Joy, anticipation, relief. A dream I had almost given up on was finally coming true. I was going to be a father, my child, not someone else's, mine. Evelyn looked at me with such tenderness, a deep connection between us that I hadn't realized I was craving until that very moment. "We're going to be parents, Mark," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm ready," I whispered, and for the first time in years, I knew I truly meant it. The rest of the trip passed in a blur of excitement and shared dreams. We talked about names, about our future, about everything we wanted for our child. We hadn't even known if it would be a boy or a girl, but that didn't matter. Every conversation was filled with the hope of what was to come. When we got home, everything felt different. Evelyn's pregnancy wasn't just a new chapter, it was a rebirth for both of us. The home that had once been filled with tension and regret now felt like a place where new dreams could be built. It was a fresh start, one we'd both earned in our own way. We went to ultrasounds, watched the screen in awe as the technician showed us our baby's heartbeat, the tiny fingers and toes forming. Every step felt like a confirmation that this was right, that we were finally on the path to something real. As the months passed, the excitement only grew. Evelyn's belly grew round, and so did my heart. I watched her navigate pregnancy with such grace, and I couldn't help but admire her strength, the way she took everything in stride, the way she made me feel like the luckiest man alive. When our son, Chaz, was born, I held him for the first time and couldn't believe how much love could fit into something so small. His little hand wrapped around my finger, his cry loud and strong, the first sound of his life ringing in the room like a perfect melody. It was a joy I had never known, a love I had never felt before. I had thought I knew what it meant to be a father, but this was different. This was mine. I watched Evelyn with him, her smile soft and loving, and I knew that we were a family, a real family. This was the life I had wanted all along, and it was finally here. It was a dream reborn, one I thought was lost forever. But Io Chai's, our son, was everything I had needed, everything I had been waiting for. And in that moment, with him in my arms, I knew that I could finally leave everything else behind. The past, the pain, the losses, they didn't matter anymore. I had my family, I had Evelyn, and I had Chase. For the first time in a long time, everything felt right. Everything felt complete. It was a Saturday afternoon when they came. The day had been peaceful. Evelyn was in the living room with Chase, watching him play on the floor while I sat at the kitchen table, going over some bills. It was the kind of calm I had gotten used to in recent months, the kind of normalcy that felt like a blessing after everything. The knock at the door was hesitant, almost uncertain. I didn't know what to expect, but as I walked toward it, a sudden dread filled my stomach. When I opened it, there they were, Liza and Andrew. They looked different. Gone was the confident, entitled energy they had carried when they left. In its place was something raw, something desperate. Liza's hair was unkempt, her face thinner, the usual makeup she always wore now absent. She looked like she had been through a lot, but that didn't matter to me. Andrew stood behind her, his arms crossed, eyes avoiding mine. His teenage arrogance was gone, replaced by something more bitter. Mark ... Liza started, her voice wavering as she spoke my name, but she couldn't quite meet my eyes. Can we talk? Andrew added, his voice flat, like he was saying something obligatory. I didn't invite them in. I stood in the doorway, feeling the heat rise in my chest. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice colder than I intended. Liza shifted uneasily on her feet. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out for a long moment. She looked to Andrew, as if searching for words, but then finally, she spoke. We need your help, Mark. I couldn't stop the bitter laugh that escaped me. Help? I repeated, stepping back slightly as I let the words sink in. After everything you did, you think I'm going to help you? Andrew shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his mother before speaking. Dad, Kevin, he left us. He cheated. He's gone. He won't take us back. Liza finally met my eyes. We have nowhere to go, Mark. We're homeless. I don't know who else to turn to. I stood frozen for a moment, the past crashing into me like a wave. It wasn't the desperation in their eyes that caught me. It was the sheer audacity of them showing up, asking me for help, after everything they had done. After Liza had walked out, after Andrew had turned his back on me, after all the years I had spent building a life with them that they had destroyed. Now they wanted me to fix it. You think I should just forget everything? Everything you did? I asked, voice rising despite myself. You turned your back on me when I needed you, Liza. And now you want me to take you back in? Liza's face twisted with something like shame, but she still tried to justify it. It's not like that, Mark. I didn't know how bad things would get with him. I was trying to start over. But now I see how much I hurt you. I didn't mean to. Not really. I stepped back, almost retreating from the door, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. You think I'm just supposed to take you back in after everything? After you destroyed my life? After you destroyed our family? Andrew finally spoke, his voice sharp. You're not my real dad. I don't owe you anything. You think you did everything right? You weren't the one who was there. You weren't there when I needed someone. His words hit harder than anything else. The sting of rejection, the bitterness, the complete disregard for everything I had sacrificed, everything I had been to him. You're right, I said, each word cutting through the space between us. I wasn't there for you, but I tried. I tried to be the father you needed, but I'll be damned if I let you walk in here now and ask for help. Liza stepped forward, desperation written all over her face. Please, Mark. We're sorry. We've lost everything, and we don't have anywhere else to go. I know I messed up, but I need you. Andrew needs you. Please, just let us stay for a while. The words burned, but I held my ground. You had everything. You had the life you wanted, and you left. You both left. You chose Kevin. You chose him, and now you want me to fix it? I shook my head slowly. You want to come back into my life after everything you've done? You think I'll just take you in because now you have nowhere else to go? Liza's face crumpled, tears welling up in her eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to care. You don't get it, do you? I continued, my voice steady, cold. I have a family now, a real family, a family that actually loves me, a family that doesn't turn their back on me when things get tough. Andrew sneered. You really think she's better than us? Your real family? I didn't flinch. Yes, I do. Because they don't use me. They don't manipulate me. They don't leave me behind when things get hard. I let the silence hang between us for a moment before I stepped back and looked them both in the eye, one last time. I'm done. You've both made your choices, and now you'll have to live with them. They didn't say anything else. Liza turned her back on me first, and Andrew followed, his eyes cold, but he didn't challenge me again. They left without another word. As I closed the door behind them, I felt something inside me settle. There was no relief, no final victory. Just the quiet knowledge that I had done the right thing. I wasn't going to let them back in, not into my life, not into my family. When I turned around and walked back into the living room, I saw Evelyn with Chase, smiling at me. I knelt down beside them, taking in the sound of my son's giggle, the warmth of my wife's hand resting on his back. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Not just the absence of them, but the presence of something real, something that I had fought for, something that could never be taken away from me. This was my family now, and I was never letting them go.